Hi, good day, everybody. Here, we are having the panel discussion in terms of the disruption happening on credit cards. A very eminent panel with Sudipta Roy, business head from ICICI, Vidya Pradeep, HDFC, and Girish Buddhiraj, SBI Cards, all stalwarts in the area of asset and cards for banking and the payments industry. So welcome all of you.
Thanks, Pravina.
Thank you, Pravina.
So the industry has seen a year like never before, with both issuance and volumes having, taken a bit of a downturn. But I would like to hear from all of you what you see as the market insights as it stands today. How has the last few months panned out for the credit card industry? Do you think we are looking at a situation where certain things have changed in the post-pandemic world that weren't the same before? So, can I just go around the panel and then we'll take further questions there? Girish, could we start with you for your opening comments on this?
So actually, you're right, Prerna. Last 7 months of this financial year have been actually very, very interesting. So we have seen the lows of the April and May was still a recovery after April, but April was really, really where I think for the whole industry, the numbers crashed. Most of the numbers are available with RBI, but the whole industry experienced that because of the lockdown. And I think India was the severest of the lockdowns which we have seen. Okay. So things started to improve in Q2. In fact, we saw, and I think the industry also saw, close to 50% jump over Q1 numbers in Q2. A player would have been here and there, but approximately that was a kind of jump which was seen. October has gone really well. There is a lot of pent-up demand, which we have seen coming out in the festive season. People's, as you have known, savings rates have increased. So people have indulged into some kind of consumption-related expenditure during this festival season time. Two, three trends which are coming out very interesting, which we see is the first one is that the share of online has now increased to more than 50%. So that's a very interesting one, which we see. The second is that the online spends is now happening across age groups, which is also very interesting. So age groups of 50 plus, 55 plus, 60 plus, people who were not very comfortable earlier doing online spends are now doing those spends, and that is a very encouraging trend because it increases the width and depth of the card spending pattern. The last insight that we have seen in last this period is that a lot of new categories which were not earlier prevalent on an online platform from a consumer behavior perspective. For example, jewelry. Utilities was always popular, but now it has taken a further increased heights. So some of those categories, online education, these categories have picked up quite majorly. So we believe that this is another shift towards digitization from cash, which has happened during this period of time after demonetization.
Sudipta, over to you. Do you think the good days of 25% CAGR for the credit card industry will continue to remain? And overall, can you give us your opening remarks here?
So I think what we saw from April to August maybe was a disruption. April, May was bad disruption. But we started coming out of it in the month of July, August, September. In October, we got back to, at least in our bank, we got back to normal volumes in both in terms of issuance and almost near normal volumes in terms of spends. I would say almost near normal volumes in terms of spends because there's a small segment of hospitality and travel that still remains muted. Other than that, most of the categories and some categories are overcompensating for the sort of lack of traction in the hospitality and travel segments. And as just Girish said, there was a lot of pent-up demand. So we saw that some of the demand translated into the card spends in the month of October. So October overall was very good for the industry. However, one of the things which has been transformational during this period is the digital transformation that at least we have seen during this period. And Honestly, if you ask me, the 25% CAGR, both in terms of issuance, some issuers, the CAGR on issuance was also actually a little more, smaller issuers. But in terms of spends also, I do believe that we will come back into traction sometime around April, May, full traction by April, May of the next year, next financial year. Uh, and some of the changes that we have seen will be irreversible. For example, if you see prior to COVID, and told it in our analyst presentation last year, is that 45% of our card sourcing is digital. Without going into physical actual numbers, that number has actually grown manifold, right? And one of the things that fortunately enough, right, in the month of November last year, RBI came out with this video KYC guidelines. No one knew that this particular guideline will be so useful during the period of COVID. And one of the early things that we did when COVID hit, and our sourcing volume dropped to almost 1/20th of our normal volumes in the month of April, is then we said that we have to keep our video KYC stack up. So we built it in April and May, put it into production in June. Happy to tell you that our video KYC, the amount of volumes that we are pulling on in the month of October, right, almost close to 55 to 60% of our card volumes came into video KYC, right, in the month of October. Now that is great because first and foremost thing, the period of KYC, people are able to do it from their homes. The amount of time required, because the entire process is digital, the application is hitting the underwriting, back-end underwriting much faster. It is hitting in 2 hours compared to 2 days earlier, because the physical application used to pickle in various desks for almost 2 days before it hit the underwriting tray. And decisions are like being done in about 18 hours to 48 hours. So actually our TATs also have dropped. So I see this trend continuing and remaining after COVID. And that is why I'm saying that it is not 25% CAGR that we'll see. It is 30%, 40% CAGR that we'll see. Because the fact is that some of these efficiencies will actually de-bottleneck some of our processes and make the process much more efficient. And once the process becomes more efficient, you will see volume shooting. So I do believe that from April, May next year, you will see the industry moving to a next level. As I say, step function jump. You will see a step function jump from next year.
Yeah, that's good news.
We have also gone through a huge trial by fire on the credit side. And the industry has proven this time that the industry has wherewithal to hold credit.
Clearly, digitization has been the silver lining on the dark cloud that we've had. So it's been the golden moment for digitization, and players like yourself have really taken the full benefit of whatever has been offered on the plate. And if we can convert 25 to 35, 40, that would be a big moment that we can certainly talk about more next year. So over to you, Vidya, with that good conversation. How do you see it, and what are the insights that you have come across in the last few months? How do you see this playing forward now?
I think apart from what Girish and Sudipto have made point, I think they've covered most of the tectonic shifts that are happening, right? Because I think pre-COVID and post-COVID, we saw e-commerce significantly up. We saw the digital transformation where everything from being done on the ground had to be done digitally. Card players had excessive implementation. Moratorium is something that all of us had never implemented. We had never implemented, ex gratia. We had not done a lot of those as well. So it was a very different time where you had to dabble with consumer shift, tectonic shift in consumer behavior. And we had a lot of new initiatives, which was huge learning for the industry as a whole. For the first time, we've dealt with, some of those regulatory initiatives as well. On the consumer insight side, I think when POS took a beating, e-commerce more than replaced or has grown significantly. The YOI growth on e-commerce is upwards of 18 to 20%, which in a COVID era you wouldn't expect or you wouldn't see it, but that's what it displayed even pre-festive. You are also seeing, even in POS, you're seeing recovery, but funnily, what we did not see pre-COVID for in our bank, we are clearly seeing a lot of contactless transactions. Suddenly, a good upwards of 20% of our POS transactions are now tap and pay. So there is a a clear shift in safety and people wanting not to put their hands on the POS machine, and they are asking for tap and pay with the merchant. So what used to be 15% has become 20. Now it's upward of even 25% of POS transactions are contactless. There was a shift when things like travel went down, insurance took over. There's been a significant rise in number of people growing their insurance spending. For whatever reason, there is a consumer behavior and there is a need to cover themselves. There were good policies in the time. When Ola or Uber transactions went down, you saw Swiggy and Zomato taking over. So you can see a clear shift on when one got impacted and what replaced the other is very visible, very clear for the industry. And I think in some cases, I think all of us, what we are trying to do is ride the wave. Like the EMI growth has been significantly high. Even pre-festive, we have seen a significant growth in EMI transactions, and the need for credit is very clearly there and growing. So I think all of us are trying to ride the new wave, the new normal, and look at what all is up and running and recovered much faster. Even at upwards of 130, 140%, some categories have bounced back. So we are riding that wave and trying to pull those categories which are not yet there. I think that's where the industry is, and we are as well.
I really like what you said, relate to it very deeply. I think we are seeing the same from a RuPay standpoint. Contactless, transactions increasing every day. And it's, I think the question is, while there are contactless terminals in the market, how does one replace every card that is there, already in force, right? How can individuals be made more aware that what they have is perhaps a card issued a few years back, and how could they kind of reach out to their bank to get it exchanged or replaced. And it also leads us to what we've launched on the soft POS side, which is really looking at creating the enablement needed for physical acceptance that is deeper into the markets than where we are today in India at about 4.5 million odd terminals, which takes me to the next theme of conversation. So we've seen some, very good rebound, certain categories coming up instead of others when it comes to the usual card market. What do you see as the opportunity in terms of increasing the width of this market? So, for example, from retail users taking it into commercial users, or perhaps also the depth of the market to move into deeper markets, to move into markets that are not yet as deeply penetrated with credit cards. So how do you see this playing out? If I can take this to you, Sudipta.
$1 million question, Praveen. And the fact is that, as an industry, we have been wanting to take this out for some time, and take it to the next level for some time. But unfortunately, we have, we have not been always been successful in doing this. One of the reasons is that in terms of credit behavior, sometimes, the credit paradigm in India is slightly indisciplined, especially in certain segments which are new to credit. Having said that, the challenge of the industry is to how to identify within that particular pool of people or untested credit, which are the good pools of credit. It's not that people are generally indisciplined towards credit, especially people who are not new to credit. There are maybe people do not know how to pay. Maybe people do not know how what is the sort of normal discipline required in sort of unsecured asset credit product, right? So, and it's a learning curve that people go through, right? So I think it's a mix of sort of innovating scoring tools, and we have a lot of scoring tools which are coming across, or scoring insights which are coming across, our telecom scoring insight, our debit cards-based scoring insight. We are having these new tools which are coming out. We can actually underwrite these thin file customers very effectively. And together with it, if there is a bit of a well-rounded assimilation of what a bureau is, what a bureau score is, why credit behavior is important in these people who are untested credit, then we do believe that it will be far more conducive for us to lend at large scale. Let's understand that people who are thin file customers are currently served by or what we call subprime, near prime, or untested customers, right, are being primarily catered to by fintechs or catered to by NBFCs. The large issuers or the large players still try to play in the prime as well as the near prime. And unless the large issuers or the large players start moving into, with a degree of confidence, into subprime or untested credit, the market will really not move because the others are starved of capital, the others are starved of resources, which the large players have. So it is upon the large players to make the change. However, I do believe that this is a process. This is not a process that will happen overnight. It's a process, in my opinion, that will not take 1 year, but that will take a 5 years to 6 years journey. And once you have enough confidence and once you have enough data to see that this is a segment, this is the loss rates of that segment. So for this segment, this has to be the pricing to give me this amount of return on equity, right? Because finally, all our listed companies, we have to deliver, return on equity to our shareholders. And once those equations are clear, that's when you will see the things moving forward. Who knows? What I'm talking about is a 3-4 year journey might happen within 2 years.
Okay, great. That's really lovely. I think you spoke about scoring insights, new scoring tools. Those are going to be the key differentiators going forward, and I think that's where we see some new plays happening as we speak. So, Girish, taking from the same question, is there an opportunity to broaden the scope, deepen the scope of credit card payments, commercial cards, merchant cards, deeper small tier customers being brought into the card space? And if I may add on, is there an opportunity for the credit card as a tool to play a role in the recovery of the economy that we are talking about, or is that asking too much? Is this not the right tool for that? Could you give us some of your perspectives there?
So, Praveena, 2-3 things. I think you have 3 questions you've asked, and I'll take them one by one. The first part is on the economy part of it. Okay, I think credit card today is one of a very, very critical tool because not only from a credit lending perspective, but from a payments perspective. Okay, it has earlier credit card, though it starts with credit as a first word. Okay, but end of the day, from a very credit oriented thing, it has now become a payments mechanism, and that to add on to it the affordability part, which is the EMI part, which both Vidya and Sudipto talked about. That has become very, very critical. Okay, so in the month of April, May, if people did not have an instrument, either a credit card or it would have been very difficult even to get basic household goods at your home. Okay, so it has become that part of life from that perspective. So the integralness to the economy is definitely there. On the tier 2, tier 3, actually we started the tier 2, tier 3 journey close to 2-3 years back. Okay? So as a SBI, we realized that we need to go deeper. We have a lot of customers in multiple cities. Okay, 50% of the spends is actually coming now from tier 2 and below. The capacity to spend on the purchasing power was already there. Their needs are also there, and with online coming up, they want to get, now the servicing is also going to happen. Okay, the issue is credit, as Sudipto rightly mentioned, as to what and how you are going to give new to credit customers, what kind of risk you can take, and so what we have realized that even after the moratorium now, when we look at the data, and we have shared this in our analyst meets also, on a ratio basis, actually, the new to credit customer in tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 town is actually behaving is better than a tier 1 town. Okay, so this still somehow, because of the whatever cultural reasons, as a country, people still don't. They would want to pay back their debts, and that's if you do the right things. And we are very happy to see that behavior over a period of time. These guys will build their credit scores, and they should be able to get lending from other large institutions also, and other things, because credit card typically in worldwide also is the starting point of building your credit scores for most of the customers, and that is going to happen over a period of time. So that is the tier 2, tier 3 part. The third part which you raised, which is about the merchant business and others, there is whole lot of scope in digitizing a lot of B2B payments. Okay, even business to government payments, consumer to government payments are already lot to a large degree work has happened in that. In fact, in this COVID times, we have seen that lot of corporates which work with us are paying their statutory dues using a card, corporate card. Okay, so that is the kind of change of used cases that we have seen in the corporates also. So I also believe, as Sudipta said, this is just a beginning. Large economies and developed economies have close to 50% of their overall cash flows in a digitized format, and that to credit and debit. And I'm not even talking about other ways and means in some form and shape, at least consumer part of it. We would hardly be 8, 10, 12% in whichever way you look at it. So there is a whole lot of growth of the economy as well as this part to be captured. So these are just early days.
Oh, that's very good. I think you couldn't have put it more beautifully.
One of my persons I know used to know, and he used to say that if it is a 2020 match, it's only the second over, third ball being played. That's it.
That's right. That's right. And I really like the way you put it. The quiet power that the EMI proposition and credit cards is really giving to the revival of the economy as we see it today is very understated but very powerfully present. So thanks for pulling that up, Girish. So Vidya, when we look at this being able to access new customers, consumer behavior, when it comes to the digitized world, digital onboarding, the whole digital experience. So is that giving the industry access to these markets which are beyond the usual? And if I were to follow that up with another question, are there new customer segments that you're really seeing arise out of this?
Yeah, I think very clearly digitalization as a bank, I think even on the acquiring side, when we step out and when you're starting to digitalize even the merchants and a lot of the businesses which are out there, we are seeing a lot of emergence of new categories even on the acquiring side who want to be digitalized. There is a huge rush of segment of people. On one side, yes, there is growth of UPI and merchants promoting a lot of UPI transactions, which also as a bank is an important form factor for us and we would like to grow it. At the same pace, there are enough merchants and new category of merchants coming out and asking for POS machines, MPOSs. There's a lot of home delivery which is picked up. So they want devices. Consumers are asking for card payments at home. They're asking for SMS-based solutions. So there is a lot of demand we see for new ways to pay. And it cuts across the grocery segment of merchants. It cuts across healthcare and pharmacies. We are seeing that kind of demand for digitalization. And on the issuance side, like we've already discussed, it's through contactless or it is through digital onboarding. Consumers actually coming and demanding a lot more tools than what they've had before. If they had only certain visibility of certain type of transactions on their mobile banking or an app, they want far more amount of information and flexibility and experience to be reached out to them through their own mobile devices. So I think what we clearly saw during COVID is both sides of the clients, the retail consumers and the merchant side of our business, coming out and asking for a lot of solutions, which was actually fresh. We've not seen it as much as we saw it during the COVID earlier, which used to probably largely deal with NEFT and IMPS transfers, are reaching out asking for credit facilities. So we clearly see pent-up demand in a different form, not just in retail purchases, but wanting to access credit in different forms and digital solutions in different forms. There is a very clear pent-up demand and people reaching out across all these segments. So good times, hopefully.
Thank you, Vidya.
Starting.
That's a So great segue into the last topic that I wanted to cover, which is really around how merchants are driving solutions, how merchants are driving demand, and the rise of fintechs who are coming into the issuance of credit cards, merchants who want to play a leading role in driving the programs around credit cards by way of co-brands, So, Sudipta, can you share your thoughts in terms of how you see this as being a driving factor in the industry? What sort of spaces do you think are emerging? What's the role of the bank here? How does the bank see this and co-innovate, partner, collaborate through this journey?
So, Pravina, we are seeing two broad trends now emerging. One trend is obviously there are a lot of fintechs who are getting into issuance of cards in partnership with banks. Uh, Fintechs, and there are a couple of them, and I do believe that this trend will become more prevalent in the coming months. The 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 only thing that I would and the other thing is that merchants are looking at newer solutions and demanding newer solutions from banks, especially both on the acquiring side as well as merchants, large merchants wanting their own card programs. Right, for example, our program with Amazon, successful Flipkart, HDFC's program with Google, and say SBI cards program with Paytm, right? Which I can take for example of these are large scale volume merchants. But now the question is that if the customer banks with us, if the customer has an account with us, if the customer has a personal loan with us, the customer has a credit card with us, do I as a bank own the customer, or because the same customer is using a platform like Amazon or Flipkart or Paytm or maybe Zomato or Swiggy or whatever, who owns the customer? The answer is somewhere in between. It is a shared ownership, and the fact is that though the financial footprint uh, might be very, very strong on the financial institution side, the behavioral footprint or the consumption footprint is very, very strong on the merchant side. Right now, the question is that the problem where it comes is the problem economics. Some of the e-commerce economics or some of the behavioral economics on the e-commerce side are slightly anemic, or frankly, because of extreme competition, some of the economics of those behavioral models have become weaker, whereas the economics on the financial services side still remain very, very strong. So it is a natural tendency of the players who are finding or trying to balance their economics to try and come and take some amount of the economics which is available with the financial services side and move it to their side. So this is a sort of a balancing or a push and pull which is continuing. Now the question comes here is that if you have an entity which is coming and trying to take revenue share from with you, right? Do you collaborate with the entity or do you compete with the entity?
Very nice. You practically, crystal gazed out there. And I remember the last conversation we had about a year back, Sudipta, when you spoke about the NTB network, tech, and banks and the role each plays in this go forward journey. So it's an interesting journey, and I think here tech/merchant kind of in that same space, right? So great. And Girish, I'm going to hand over the finishing comments to you. So question on the fintech merchant-led propositions, co-brand space. So if you can expand your perspective on that and close the discussion for us, that'll be great.
So Sudipta has very lucidly put the merchant fintech. If he's if the merchant himself is a fintech or a Amazon like a player or e-commerce players and the kind of challenges which are there. I think there is a bit of realism in the way banks or way we operate. There is a whole lot of optimism in which the fintechs and some of these e-commerce guys operate. So somewhere actually we become more optimistic along with these. A lot of new fintechs which are coming, which also are operating into some specific areas of core where the core credit card businesses are. And they are also rethinking, rechanging, reworking the way that some of these things operate. Idea is to collaborate with them and to learn from them and then incorporate them into our own business models so that we become more efficient along with them. On some of these co-brands, these partnerships are a great idea. I think for acquiring, not only for acquiring new customers, because for us, for SBI, the bank itself has a base of more than 400 million customers. So it's a fairly large base with 280 to 90 million debit cards, and so this is also important for new credit models because you start to get differential data from the partners, and that is the way that the new to credit, which Sudipto and I was mentioning earlier, can be brought into the proper mainstream because these people have started using some of these things. They are showing their behavior. It is up to the us as industry to how do you use those data, alternate data from these players as partners, and start creating models where we can bring them more and more customers into the mainstream credit segments. Okay, so that is a very we find that as a more important variable into the picture where when we look at partnerships from that perspective. And yes, customer has to be shared, and that battle will continue.
Thank you, Girish. And we've got a really good proposition with the HDFC with the IOCL card on RuPay, the Shaurya card with SBI cards, and of course, really so happy with the great progress we are seeing on the IRCTC co-brand. So, from a RuPay standpoint, I think this is a space we are very excited in and working with all of you in many facets there. So thank you so much. Thanks for joining us, and look forward to many more such interactions. Thank you. Thanks, Sudipta, Vidya, and Girish.